Hello everybody and welcome back to another CSGO custom map feedback video. Today we're taking a look at the park by imgur. As you may notice, I have already done a video on a map called the park, and the first two things I want to say are quite similar. The name the park is quite commonly used on the workshop, so I suggest you would change it to something more special, because if someone is looking especially for your map and types on the park on the workshop, he may not find it. Also, if your name is different, it may stand out from the other maps on the workshop, and people may find it more often. Then the DE underscore prefix isn't common to use in the workshop name, the workshop title, because it would also show up in game if you load into the map. In the description you say that while doing this map you were inspired by mostly Dust and Mirage, and it shows in the kind of sandy environment, but there's nothing wrong about that. On the visual side, I would say there are quite a few things that could be done better. For one, the architecture of the non-sand buildings isn't really realistic, so, and also a bit like flat and lame. You could look at reference pics and maybe add some height variance there. Also, if you compare like the B spot with the rest of the map, you can see where the height variance is really nice and how it kind of lags in the rest. Also, the sun comes straight from above, so there isn't any angle on it. I would suggest giving it a little angle, because if you look at all your walls, they're all dark because sun doesn't hit them properly, and giving it just like your light environment, just a little angle would make the map look a bit nicer, in my opinion. But this is personal preference, of course. What is quite fun in the visual part is the scaling on the props, especially the boxes. I think it is a nice idea, and it works pretty well and fits in this kind of place, in this kind of map. And it isn't seen very often, I think, like these Dust 2 boxes scaled like to these massive boxes right here. Also, if you look at the ground, it's often one texture for a very large space. There are some blending textures, like where you can add some kind of variance to it, and also maybe cut them into more parts. I think it would also add a bit to the visual part of the map. Otherwise, I think it is quite fine. It has a nice look to it, and also it's fitting together quite well. The only thing that I would mention is that there are a lot of maps like in this kind of style, but there's nothing wrong with it. Again, like, you can surely work on it a bit more and make it stand out to other projects. On the layout, I have some things to say. It is quite hard as a single person to judge layout, but it seems like close ranged fights are very unlikely, and orbs could dominate on this map because there are these very open spaces and long angles to hold. Also, the mid entrances for both sides feel a bit weird, in my opinion. Like, for CT you have these two vent kinda things where you have to duck through, and it makes it hard to get like more people in there, and it also just feels kinda weird not having a right entrance. You have this one on from B side, but there's just way too long, and T's would have rushed it easily if you take this route. And also it's quite awkward for B because for T's, because if you run to mid, you're basically already on B on spot before you reach it. You have this kind of sneaky boost, but I would suggest maybe like adding some kind of depth into mid and maybe add some corridors that are a bit better to use. Another thing would be that when you're looking at B spot, the terrorists and the counter-terrorists are equally fast to the spot, so the CTs don't really have time to set up any defense, and it would be really easy to rush B for the Ts. Overall, it feels like rushes and AWPs are a bit overpowered, and I think both of them can be fixed if you add a little more architecture or a little close range fights, and maybe give CTs a bit more time to set up. When it comes to fast fixes, there's quite some clipping that can be adjusted quite easily. There is this well on B where you have the clipping kind of weird, so the player is able to walk on the corner, sort of, but not quite. So I would just suggest taking the brush from the well, copying it and placing it right above and drag it up, and then make it a clip texture so it is connecting perfectly. Or just make the well accessible for players to jump in. Then on the ground you have some small bumps. On this one spot you have made a clip over it, but I would just suggest removing the collisions on the prop. It would just make it a bit smoother when running over it, just like a flat area. Then the stairs clipping seemed like you worked a bit off grid. On B and from D to A there are two stairs that are just kind of weird. When playing it you won't really notice it, but it just feels like they're not really smooth when taking a deeper look into it. Also on B spot it's kind of like the clipping before. You have these really small bumps on the ground. And again, I would just suggest making them, turning the collisions off on these props. When it comes to lighting, you have this corner on A that is really dark, and I would highly suggest adding some kind of lighting there, because it's pretty easy for a CT to hide or a T to hide there without them being noticed. It would add a lot to visibility if you light it up in some kind of way with a torch or something. Then on CT spawn you have these grass props that draw shadows, pretty dark shadows. I would often suggest removing shadows from foliage, because in source it just gives these very weird, very dark shadows, and I think would look a bit nicer if you turned them off. There's also this little texture bug at T-spawn. Maybe redo the prop or try to fix this. It's not a lot, but it's kind of disturbing if you take a closer look. Also, when it comes to the bots, you have an old navigation file, so I would just generate a new nav before publishing the next map. And your tar entities for the radar, which by the way looks really nice, has some nice color, are still in the map. Just get them into a vis group and uncheck them when compiling, so you have so that they won't show up in the console when loading up the map. Yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say about this. Just for the layout, if you want some more in-depth feedback on this, please go for some playtesting. There are some playtesting services that you can get your map in, and you would get feedback from more people that are actually playing the map then. Other than that, that's about it. And if you see this video, if you like the video, please drop a like, maybe subscribe. And if you see this video and you want your own map to be reviewed, be sure to check the description. There is an email where you can send it to. If you maybe have a map by a friend or a map that you would like to be reviewed that is not yours, you can also send them. Would be highly appreciated. Just add some known issues if it's your own map, and some pictures if there are none on your workshop. If everything goes well, see you next Sunday. Have a nice day and good luck, have fun mapping.